Welcome back to a new video. So today I'm doing another autism reviews video. I've got quite a few of these planned actually because there's quite a lot of things I've been ordering that I want to review, but they're going to be scattered. But today we're doing the iPad Pro. So if you watched the vlogs, then you'll know that I recently bought an iPad Pro. It was very expensive and I wasn't sure if I was going to do an autism review on this because it's not like really anything. Like, I mean, it's kind of related to my autism, I guess, but it's more of a loose connection. However, I asked on Instagram if you wanted me to do it, and a lot of people said they did, so I'm here. I'm reviewing it for you, so let's just get into it. So I bought the 2020 version of the 11-inch iPad Pro in silver. It has 256 megabyte storage. I bought the Apple Care and I got Wi-Fi only, not because you can get Wi-Fi and cellular, but that means you'd have to pay sort of like a monthly subscription like it was a phone. So my total came to £924 for the iPad. So a little bit of background, because I did spend less than possibly some other people would, because for starters I went into the store, which means I was able to get a student discount because I'm at college, which probably took at least 100, maybe even 200 quid off my total, so that was pretty neat. I also, it's worth mentioning that I did not buy my Apple Pencil. My dad works in IT and so he just had one that I could have, so I didn't purchase this, so it would have been an extra, I think it's £125 for the Apple Pencil, but I didn't have to buy mine. So those are just some things that I thought were worth mentioning. I did get some discounts in some areas because of other circumstances, but it's still a lot of money, basically. So as per usual, I'm just going to go through the pros and cons of the iPad Pro, the Apple Pencil, and I'm also going to talk about a couple of apps that I've got on it that I specifically wanted, and then at the end I will rate everything, including the iPad, the Apple Pencil, and the two apps I'm going to talk about. So when I was first looking at the iPad, I was actually originally not going to specifically buy the iPad Pro. The thing that I was specifically interested in is the Apple Pencil, because I have autism and I also have Tourette's, which means that, I mean, I've always been an artist, but I find traditional art to be frustrating for me because, one, with my Tourette's is in my right hand, which is obviously my dominant hand, which means that if I tick while I'm drawing, then it can ruin it. And like, there's nothing I can do about it. I can't always control it, and so it's obviously very frustrating because I can spend like 10 hours on something that is ruined in a second with something that I can't control. So it's very frustrating, and it's one of the reasons why I've sort of moved away from art into things like photography, because it's so frustrating to spend hours of your life working on something and have it ruined in a heartbeat by a neurological condition that you can't control. So for that reason I've always been interested in digital art, but for years it just wasn't working for me. So I think the most common type of sort of like touchscreen pen is this one with like the squishy end, and so I've tried using this one for years and it just never really worked for me. I've tried drawing on Photoshop using just my mouse, because I have all the Adobe things through my dad's work because he works in IT, which is obviously very nice. You know, I tried drawing on Illustrator. I have a Wacom tablet as well, and it comes with a pen, but it's not like an iPad. You plug it into your computer and then this box here, it maps the screen, and so it's more interactive than using a mouse, but it's also not quite as good as actually drawing on an iPad. You know, I looked into sort of other methods of digital drawing, like selecting and filling areas so I didn't have to like actually draw, and none of them really worked. So in the end I did come to the conclusion that really the only way I was going to be able to draw how I wanted to was to get the bloody Apple Pencil, which was really annoying because Apple is very expensive for one thing, and they're also a little bit cheeky in how they do things, so that you have to have all these other things in order to make this one work. Because I do actually already have an iPad. I've had this for like 7 years or something. I had one originally when I was very small, like 6 or 7 or something, and that was like the very first iPad. I'm so old, clearly, but then eventually we had to upgrade that, and so I have this one, and I've had this for years, like since before I started secondary school, and obviously I'm in college now, so it's quite old. It's currently dead because I never charge it, but I believe this is the iPad 4 mini, or maybe 3, but the point is it's really old. And so originally I was just going to buy the Apple Pencil because there's nothing inherently wrong with this one. I mean, it's really old and it's like, it's small and it's not the most up-to-date, but like, it's fine, it's not broken, there's nothing wrong with it. However, it's so old that the Apple Pencil doesn't work with it, which was obviously very frustrating. So when I realised this, I was like, okay, so I've established, like, I've tried everything, the only thing that's going to work is to buy the Apple Pencil. But for that, I need to get a new iPad because mine is just too much of a dinosaur. So after establishing this, I decided, okay, so I need to decide which iPad is going to be the best. And while, you know, I don't necessarily, as I said, I wasn't necessarily looking at the iPad Pro originally because, you know, there's nothing wrong with the other iPads. Seeing as I had to buy a new iPad anyway, I decided I may as well just go for the Pro, spend the money, and it's obviously then, it's the latest one, which means that I won't have to upgrade for much longer. Whereas if I'd gone for the much cheaper option, but like the earliest version that supports the pencil, I would have had to upgrade much sooner, which would have ended up being more money in the long run. So I just sort of bit the bullet and bought the iPad Pro. So that is sort of how I came to buying the iPad, because the pencil is all I wanted, but I had to buy a new iPad and I decided to just go the whole hog because, I mean, if you're not an artist, then honestly I don't think I'd recommend the iPad Pro because it is so expensive and it doesn't do much extra than the other ones. So I only went for the iPad Pro because I had to upgrade anyway, and you know, I am an artist, I'm a photographer, so I use it for all manner of creative things, and the Pro is better for that, so that's why I went for it. But if you're just sort of like a normal person using it for maybe business things, then I don't think it's that necessary. But you know, I don't have like a huge amount to say about the iPad itself. Like, I mean, it's obviously really expensive, which is a huge con. Like, it's so expensive. It hurts to talk about how expensive it was, but I mean, it is good. You can have a matte screen protector, which is what I have, which I really like because it feels like you're drawing on paper. So if you're an artist, I would really recommend this. I mean, not everyone will get on with it, but I love the feeling of actually drawing on paper. Something to mention, it does only have Face ID. And it doesn't have like a button at the bottom, which I'm like, I don't mind it on my iPad at all, but I'm not a huge fan of that on the phone. I much prefer the button on a phone, but you know, I'm not usually fussy about it on the iPad. It does have a reasonably good camera, and you can sort of like, you can split your screen like it's on a laptop, so you could have 2 tabs open at once. So it is like, it does a lot of things. I sort of think of it like a laptop but without the keyboard. So, and you can actually buy a keyboard that goes with it. So it really is just a very interactive laptop in a way. So it is great, but it's also not at all necessary in my opinion. So yeah, really the iPad itself was just, it was a very personal decision for me because I didn't want to have to upgrade too soon, and also because I am an artist it made more sense. But honestly, it's so expensive that I would, like, there's no shame in going for an earlier version at all. Although it is nice to be able to flex that I have an iPad Pro, you know, it sounds better. So, onto the pencil, which is what I really wanted. So, I could go on and on about this, but let's just talk about some of the main factors. So, the first thing that I love is, like, it's like an actual pencil. It feels like you're holding a real pencil, whereas these, first of all, they're shorter. Like, if I take the lid off, like, it's so short. They're thicker, and it's like, it's slightly weighted to one side, which I don't like. But whereas this, it's like, it feels like a pencil. It's not like ridiculously heavy one way or another. So it's really nice to hold. And it also, the newer version of the pencil, I believe my dad has a slightly different one because he has the iPad Pro but the 2018 version, and the Apple Pencil for that one is completely cylindrical, whereas this one, you can't really see it very well, but it does have a flat side, which I think is really nice. You can double tap on the side and it will like change settings. I personally don't get on with that because of my Tourette's. I did it too much and it just kept switching from like the paintbrush to the eraser and stuff, and it was really annoying. I know people like my dad really like it, so you know, if you're like a tech nerd, then you probably will like it. Another thing that was a real big draw for me towards the Apple Pencil, no pun intended, was that when I'm drawing, there's no delay between my action and the stroke appearing on the screen, because I find that when I use things like the Wacom tablet on my computer, there is a slight delay from when I actually draw to when it appears on the screen, which I find really difficult to comprehend personally because of my autism. I just can't, like, it becomes very unnatural because what I'm seeing isn't matching up with what I'm doing. There's like a whole 1.5 seconds delay, and so it confuses me and it ruins the workflow. I've also just never quite gotten the hang of, you know, perfectly understanding where the screen is on the mapped bit on the tablet. So I mean, the Wacom tablet works great for some things, but it just doesn't work for the digital drawing. I still use it for many other things though. And I think the Wacom tablet specifically is great if you're on a laptop, because trackpads are horrible. I have a PC, so it's not as big of an issue, but if I was saying, like, if I was travelling, then I would bring my laptop and my Wacom tablet, because, you know, trackpads are horrible. We all hate trackpads. Another thing is that the Apple Pencil, it listens to you a lot more. So I find that with these ones, and really any other kind of like touchscreen pen, there's always a slight delay. It's only like a fraction of a second. But and maybe most people don't notice it, but I notice it, and it really bothers me. And there's also with these, first of all, these lids are really hard to get off, but they're rounded. So, and it's squishy, so it's not a fine point, so I can't get detail, whereas this is, well, it's a pencil, so you can get fine detail, and you can do that, or you can, and it like makes the line wider, you know what I mean? So it just, like, I cannot sing the praises of this pencil enough. Like, I know Apple is so expensive, and trust me, I tried everything to avoid buying into it, but like, there really is just nothing that compares to the Apple Pencil, which makes me a bit mad, but you know, it is what it is, I guess. This Apple Pencil has honestly, like, it sounds really dramatic to say changed my life, but it has, because I can draw again, because I took art at GCSE, but that was kind of because I was taking it at GCSE. The only reason I was drawing was because of my GCSE, and honestly, I sort of fell out of love with it because I then had to for school, and so I was like, well, I don't want to do it then. But also, as my Tourette's, it's sort of like it's gotten worse as I got older, and generally it doesn't bother me too much. Like, I can ignore it, and even if I am ticking quite badly, then I can still just work around it, and it doesn't bother me a huge amount. But art is the one thing that it does really matter, because if I'm ticking while I'm drawing, then obviously it ruins the work. So having this Apple Pencil means that I can draw again, because even though I have all of these other devices that I've tried to draw with, they've just never worked. So being able to draw with this on the iPad has been a game changer, because one, I can actually draw with it as opposed to the other things that I can't wrap my head around, or you can't get enough detail, or there's a delay. And also, of course, when you're drawing digitally, there's this magical thing called the undo button. So if I do tick, it doesn't matter, because I can just press undo and do it again. So that brings me quite nicely onto the apps that I bought. Obviously the iPad comes with your normal standard apps like photos and news and blah blah blah, but I downloaded and paid for 2 specifically. So the first one was Procreate, which is quite, it's very common. Pretty much all professional artists and digital artists, graphic designers, everyone uses it. It's very, very popular. It's sort of like the Adobe of the iPad world, I guess. I do also have Adobe, I think it's Photoshop Sketch. Let me check. Yeah, so I have Adobe Sketch, which is basically pretty much the same thing as Procreate, but it's slightly more in the Photoshop realm, so it's slightly different, and I Like, I know my dad sings the praises of Adobe quite a lot. However, I disagree completely, and I think Procreate is 10 times better. I know that Adobe is possibly the more long-lasting thing, however, I don't care because Procreate is a lot better in my personal and most industries' opinions. So, you know, that was a bit shady. Sorry, Dad. Yeah, I love Procreate. I've been drawing on my iPad every single day since I've got it. I mean, I think it's different from Adobe because they have... Procreate is more geared towards artists, I guess, as opposed to graphic design or photography. It's a very subtle difference, and I think anyone who isn't specifically an artist probably won't see it. But I think Procreate is definitely more, like, you feel more like it's traditional art, if that makes sense, and you can get more more of a traditional feel, even if it's still very much digital. I mean, obviously it's digital because you're on Procreate, but I just think it's so much better. There's such a wide range of brushes, and you know, it's not just like pen, pencil, paintbrush. It's also, you know, you have all these different effects. You can have charcoal, you can have like textures and everything, and it's really like, it does everything basically. And there's still quite a lot of functionality around sort of like opacity of layers and things, which is lacking in a lot of other like drawing apps. If you just get like just a standard sketchbook app, then it'll have a variety of pens and pencils, not nearly as many, but it also, you won't necessarily be able to change the opacity of layers and play with blend modes and things. And I think Procreate is still lacking a little in some areas there, because it's not, you can't do blend modes as well as you can in Photoshop. Like, I think there's still a little bit that could be improved on, but honestly it's a very small thing, and I think the other functionality of the app far overshadows that small inconvenience. Obviously I did have to pay for it, it was a tenner, but I mean, if you've just gone out and bought the iPad Pro and an Apple Pencil, you've spent over £1,000, so I reckon you could probably shell out an extra tenner for a really excellent app. So yeah, if you're an artist of any kind, get Procreate. Absolutely 100% recommend it. So the other app that I bought, that again my dad scoffed at because he's more of a technology elitist, I guess, and he doesn't see any problem with things like Evernote, which are free. However, I decided to buy GoodNotes. Now, if you're into the sort of like study tube life, then you'll probably have heard of this, but I know a lot of sort of study tubers and study grammars, they use this on their iPads usually for note-taking at uni, or college as you call it in America. Now, I don't use it for note-taking, I use it for bullet journaling, but a lot of people use it interchangeably. I really love GoodNotes. The thing I love about it is honestly the aesthetic, which again my dad and other similar tech people will scoff at, because it's like, oh, why are you gonna pay like almost £8 for an aesthetic basically? But I think anyone in our generation will understand the aesthetic matters. In fact, it's all about the aesthetic. So the functionality of GoodNotes is essentially you can have lots of different notebooks. So I have one for my bullet journal and one for more like planning of like photo shoots, videos, blog posts, all of that stuff, and then those are the only two I have at the moment, but when I go back to college I will probably make some more. And I mean, it's not necessarily the fastest way to take notes, but it's a nice way to display them in an aesthetic way, I guess. It really does feel like you're bullet journaling, but just on an iPad. You know, you can choose what kind of paper you want, so you can have like squared paper, dotted paper, lined paper, plain paper. You can have all your own different templates. You can save your own templates, so like if you make a habit tracker, then you can just copy and paste it for the next month, and you don't have to do it all over again, which is obviously the downside of physical bullet journaling. And it also means that everything is in one place, because that was a huge problem I was finding. Like, I love notebooks, absolutely love them. Like, I have like a bullet journal, a separate diary, I have like a habit tracker, I have like a book where I write quotes down. I have like a, you know, like a nice study book and then like a rough notes book. And so it ended up being like I'd carry like 12 notebooks with me to college, and it was just, it wasn't practical. And as much as I loved all my notebooks so much, it was getting a bit ridiculous. Whereas now I can have all of my notebooks on this one iPad. And of course I can make them look really pretty, which is very important. So as I said, this did cost me money. It was $7.99, which again, if you're willing to spend over £1,000 on an iPad Pro, it's really not a big deal. You know, I'm sure like there are plenty of free apps that do very similar things. They're just not quite as pretty. So those are all the pros for all the many things, but like there really aren't that many cons, but I just wanted to go over like a few tiny things. I mean, the first very obvious thing is it's fucking expensive. Like, excuse the language, but it really is fucking expensive, and it really needs the swear words to emphasize that, because it's so goddamn expensive. Like, there's really no way around this, and I think like because the Apple Pencil is so second to none, it was worth it in the end to buy the iPad Pro. Like, I love it very much. I'm using it every day, as I said. As I said, the Apple Pencil really is second to none, and you can't get around that. You can't find it anywhere else really. Like, I've tried, trust me. You know, if you need the Apple Pencil and Procreate and stuff, and which obviously then means you're gonna have to buy an iPad, really do just think about whether you actually need the iPad Pro, because going for a different, earlier model of the iPad will save you hundreds of pounds and still do essentially exactly the same thing. You know, there might be a few things you miss out on, like I don't know if you can attach keyboards to a few of the earlier versions, but honestly for me, I didn't even bother looking at the keyboard, because like that's what a laptop's for, and I know some people like to do them simultaneously, I guess, and have two in one, but I prefer my separate devices. So if I have a laptop, why do I care if my iPad's got a keyboard? So just think about the little things and whether you actually need like the really high-end one, or whether you can opt for a cheaper version. And remember to make the most of discounts. Like, I can't stress that enough. Like, if there's any way that you can avoid paying the full price, avoid it. They don't need any more money, trust me. So I mean, there's absolutely nothing I can say that's bad about the Apple Pencil. And I mean, apart from the fact that the iPad itself is obviously really expensive, then it is a great tool. It's really good, and it's just maybe not quite worth the amount of money. However, there were just a few tiny things I wanted to point out about the apps, and these are more just, they all had solutions in the end, but I sort of wanted to mention them and tell you the solutions so that if you do buy them, then you know how to fix it without having to spend 2 hours Googling it like I did. So obviously the Procreate versus Adobe thing that I was talking about earlier, there is slightly less functionality in Procreate when it comes to things like blend modes in layers, but again, honestly, I think it's such a tiny thing, and unless you like really specifically need it, then I don't think it's worth it. Because if you really specifically need it, then you know, you can actually work in Photoshop and use a Wacom tablet or something, and I think that would work better. So honestly, I don't think it's a huge thing for what Procreate is used for, but I just thought it was worth mentioning. Obviously, I did mention earlier that the double tap feature on the pencil really annoyed me because of my Tourette's. It wasn't working, and also I'm very heavy-handed, so I kept doing it accidentally. So, but you can turn it off really easily. If you go to settings and then accessibility, then you can just switch it off. So in case you needed to know that. Last thing that really annoyed me when I first started playing around with Procreate was the pressure sensitivity on the Apple Pencil was a bit off, which is it's just a default preference thing, and you just have to change it before you get started. But it took me ages to figure out how to do it, so I just thought I'd mention it so that you don't have to spend ages figuring out how to do it. So if you go to settings in Procreate and then go to edit pressure curve, then you can change it. How much you change it will depend on how heavy-handed you are. I'm pretty heavy-handed, so I didn't do it maybe quite as extreme as some other people would, but I'll put up the example of the pressure curve setting that I use, but basically you just want to drag it pretty much all the way over to the left, because otherwise it's a bit ridiculous. So yeah, those are really all of my thoughts. So now let's get into the ratings and talk about whether or not I would recommend it. So the iPad Pro I've given 4 out of 5 stars. Like, it is top of the line, it does a load of really cool things, but I knocked it a star because honestly it's too expensive. Like, it's ridiculous. It should not be that much money. Apple Pencil, 5 out of 5 stars. Is anyone really surprised? It's a top-notch tool. If you're an artist, you need an Apple Pencil. Like, you need one. Procreate, I gave 4.5 out of 5 stars. I only knocked it half a star just because it does have mildly less functionality on like blend modes and things, but it was just something that I noticed, and honestly, if you're not a photographer like I am, then you probably wouldn't even notice that. So, and I gave GoodNotes 5 out of 5 stars because while it's not necessarily the most top of the line app, there's also nothing wrong with it, so, you know, couldn't knock it really. So, would I recommend it? I would absolutely 110% recommend the Apple Pencil. It's really, really great. I mean, I think specifically I would recommend the Apple Pencil and Procreate for any artists or graphic designers, photographers. I think it's really good if you're working in the creative industry. If you're just like a normal person, then honestly I would not recommend it, because I think it's like the Apple Pencil and the iPad Pro, they are really, really excellent top of the line tools for artists. But if you're not an artist, and if you're just like an average person going about their day-to-day life, who works like an office job, then I don't think is worth it at all. Because the functionality that I really get from it is the Apple Pencil, and obviously the pressure and the feeling like it's actually drawing, and obviously Procreate. I'm pretty sure that's an Apple only app. So for an artist, and also for someone like me, like being able to draw digitally properly is really important. But if you're not an artist, then I don't see the point of getting it personally. You know, I mean, you might want an iPad for other reasons, but I don't think you need the iPad Pro at all. I think the iPad Pro itself could be quite a good business tool if you're like a business person. Again, if it's just like a standard office job, then maybe not, but if you're slightly higher up on the business chain, then I know quite a few sort of like private school teachers will use them, and they have the keyboard attached, so it's sort of like an iPad that can display things to the class and be a laptop at the same time. So if you're someone like that, then I can see it being useful. But again, if you're like a teacher or something, you can probably get it through your work, so I wouldn't necessarily spend the money on it personally. So yeah, if you're just an average person, then don't waste your money, honestly. But if you are an artist, then I would recommend it despite the price. Just remember to try and get discounts where you can, and have a look and consider whether an earlier iPad is perfectly fine, so that you don't have to spend nearly £1,000 on the iPad. So yeah, that is my final verdict on the iPad Pro and the Apple Pencil. I hope you enjoyed watching this. I hope everyone who requested this enjoyed it and found it helpful. I am really loving my iPad Pro despite the price, and I hope that this review was useful to some people. As I said at the beginning of the video, I have quite a lot of other autism reviews videos coming up. One of them is for period underwear. I've got a really cool tooth cleaning thing coming that I'm very excited about, so there's going to be one of those soon. And I think I've got a couple of other things to review as well. I may even do the Wacom tablet as a separate thing. Let me know if you're interested in that. And yeah, other than that, thank you for watching. Like it if you enjoyed or you found it helpful. Share it with anyone who you think might be interested in iPad Pro, so they can get another opinion. Subscribe if you want to see more. I do weekly vlogs, and I also, again, I have lots of other autism reviews videos going up, as well as other miscellaneous videos over the next few months. So yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video.